the resentment of Meng Zheng in the kill, and the sound of Mei Chen's recitation on his carrying pole. When a man is frustrated, he's despised by others. Only when he attains glory can he celebrate. The red sun is occasionally shaded, and even the yellow river can turn clear. The floating clouds are always unreliable in sight. So stand firm on your feet. This poem, Shijiang Yu, generally conveys that a person's poverty and prosperity have their times. One should not boast of one's abilities because of momentary success, nor should one lose one's ambition due to a temporary setback. During the Ganlu period of the Tang dynasty, there was Prime Minister Wang Ya. Holding the first rank of officialdom, his power overshadowed all the other officials. He had thousands of servants, and his daily food expenses amounted to 10,000 coins. His glory, wealth, and honor were beyond description. The kitchen of his mansion was adjacent to a Buddhist temple. Every day, the water used for washing pots and bowls in the kitchen was poured into a ditch, and this water flowed out from the temple. One day, an old monk in the temple went out for a walk. By chance, he saw some white things in the flowing water of the ditch. Some were as big as snowflakes, and some were as small as jade crumbs. When he went closer to take a look, he found that they were top-quality white rice grains, washed off from the pots and bowls in Prime Minister Wang's kitchen. The elder put his hands together and chanted, Amitabha. What a sin, what a sin. Then he spontaneously composed a poem. In spring we plow and in summer we weed. Each grain is the fruit of great toil indeed. After spring, the fine bran is like carved jade. When cooked, the fragrant rice seems piled with silver made. With 3 full meals, there's naught else to do. But a mouthful can relieve the poor when in need. It's lamentable to see the mess in the ditch, and pity the poor people under the sky. After the elder finished reciting the poem, he immediately called the fire worker Taoist and asked him to scoop up the leftover rice in the ditch with a strainer. Then he washed away the dirt in the clear river, spread it out on a sieve, dried it in the sun, and stored it in a porcelain jar, to see how long it would take to fill the jar. In less than 3 or 4 months, the jar was already full. Within 2 years, a total of more than 6 large jars were accumulated. Prime Minister Wang Ya thought that his wealth and honor would last for thousands of years and generations of luxury. Who would have known that extreme joy begets sorrow? Once he offended the court, his whole family was awaiting investigation, and their life and death were uncertain. At that time, all the guests dispersed, the servants fled, and the granaries were all seized by his enemies. Prime Minister Wang had 23 close relatives. They ran out of rice and food, endured hunger, and their cries of distress could be heard in the neighboring temple. The elder heard it and felt compassion. They were just separated by a wall, and the only way to get through was to make a hole in the wall. The elder soaked the dried rice accumulated in the jar until it was soft, steamed it, and then sent it to them. After Prime Minister Wang Ya ate it, he thought it was very delicious and sent a maidservant to ask the old monk how he, a monk, could have such fine food. The old monk said, "This is not the ordinary food of this poor monk. It is the leftovers from your mansion's pot and bowl washing, which flowed into the ditch." This poor monk cherished the useful things that would otherwise be discarded as useless. I washed them clean with clear water, dried them in the sun, and kept them as food for the poor and beggars in times of famine. Today, who would have known that it would still relieve the urgent need of your esteemed residents? Truly, every bite and every sip are preordained. After hearing this, Prime Minister Wang Ya sighed and said, "I have been so wasteful of natural resources in the past. How could I not be defeated? The disaster today is surely inevitable." That night, he took poison and died. When he was rich and noble in the past, how could he have known there would be such a day? Truly, when poor, one often yearns for wealth; when wealthy, one steps into crises. This is when excessive good fortune brings disasters, and one brings trouble upon oneself. If people are poor and humble now, how can they know about their future wealth? Just as when they are in glory, how can they believe in the future hardships? Now I will tell another story of someone who experiences worry first and then joy. Dear readers, among you, if there are those like Han Xin who endured humiliation beneath someone's crotch, or Suchin whose wife didn't get off the loom to greet him, listen to this storytelling. Each of you should go back and hold your head high to live your life, waiting for the opportune time to come. Don't lose your ambition prematurely. There is a poem with 4 lines. The withered grass in the autumn wind will surely meet spring. Even the inchworm in the mud will stretch someday. Don't laugh if one fails to draw a tiger well. Once the fangs and claws are ready, it will startle everyone. During the Tian Shun reign of our dynasty, in Jianghu County, Yanping Prefecture, Fujian Province, there was an official family. The head of the family was Ma Wangqin, who held the position of a censor in the Department of Officials. Because he criticized the eunuch Wang Zhen for seizing power and harming the country, he was dismissed from office and became a commoner. His wife passed away early, and he had only one son named Ma Ren, whose courtesy name was Deshan. At the age of 12, he entered the county school. He was intelligent and erudite. When it came to his intelligence, he was like Yan Hui, who could understand 10 things from 1. When it came to his erudition, he was like Yu Xinan, who had a vast amount of knowledge. Truly, his literary talent was matchless in the world, and his reputation exceeded that of others. Censor Ma cherished him like fine gold and beautiful jade, which goes without saying. Among the wealthy young men in the village, first, because he was the noble son of a court official, and second, because of his talent in the imperial examinations, they believed that he would surely rise to prominence sooner or later. So they all vied with each other to flatter him. Among them, there were 2 people who flattered him especially fervently. Truly, they offer warmth in the cold and find things to do in their leisure time. When going out, they always call each other brothers, and when spending money, they don't care whose money it is. Once they casually mention that the wine in the shop is good, they invite him to have 3 cups. As soon as they praise the beauty of the courtesans in the brothel, they offer to pay for a month's entertainment. They fawn and flatter him, and even say that their hands still smell fragrant after doing so. They are eager to spit on the ground or step on sputum before others, for fear that someone else will do it first. There is no end to their flattering smiles and fawning postures, only lacking the act of offering their wives and children. One was named Huang Sheng, nicknamed Sick Ghost Huang, the other was named Gu Xiang, nicknamed Flying Firecracker Gu. Their ancestors had also served as officials, and they were both from wealthy families. Although they were illiterate, they still had the false reputation of being scholars. They treated Ma Deshan like a great bodhisattva, hoping to have friendly relations with him when he became rich and noble in the future. Ma Deshan was an honest and kind gentleman. Since they came to him with courtesy, he also responded with courtesy. Seeing their eagerness, he became friends with them. Huang Sheng then promised his younger sister Lu Ying to Ma Deshan as a wife. Ma Deshan was overjoyed when he heard that this woman was both talented and beautiful. But he made a vow since childhood. Only when I have my name on the imperial examination list can I have the wedding night. Censor Ma saw that he had lofty aspirations and did not force him. So, although he was over 20 years old, he had not yet gotten married. It was the year of the provincial examination. One day, Huang Sheng and Gu Xiang invited Ma Deshan to go to the bookstore to buy books. They saw that there was a fortune-telling shop next to the bookstore. The signboard read, "To know the good or bad of your fate, just ask Zhang Taikao." Ma Deshan said, "This man is called Taikao, so he must be willing to speak the truth directly." After buying the books, he went to the next door, cupped his hands towards Mr. Zhang and said, "I, a humble student, ask for help with my birth chart." The fortune teller asked for his 8 characters of birth, and then deduced for a while based on the principles of the interaction of the 5 elements and the truth of the 5 celestial bodies. He said, "If you, sir, don't mind, I, a humble person, dare to speak the truth directly." Ma Deshan said, "A gentleman asks about disasters, not good fortune. Why should you hide anything?" Huang Sheng and Gu Xiang were standing beside him, afraid that the fortune teller might not know his place and say something to offend the young master. Huang Sheng then said, "Sir, look carefully and don't talk casually." Gu Xiang said, "This gentleman is a famous scholar in our county. Just tell me whether he will pass the provincial examination or become the top scorer this year." The fortune teller said, "I, a humble person, will just speak the truth according to the principles. I don't know if it's accurate or not. Your birth chart shows that you have an extraordinary talent and your father is outstanding. Logically, you must have been born into an official family." Huang Sheng and Gu Xiang clapped their hands and laughed, saying, "This is already accurate." The fortune teller said, "Among the 5 celestial bodies, your fate is entwined with Kuei and Bai, and your literary talent is unparalleled in the world." The two laughed again and said, "Good fortune teller, it's accurate, it's accurate." The fortune teller said, "It's just a pity that the fortune you will have at the age of 22 is not good. There are many inauspicious stars related to officialdom, which will bring great disasters. It will not only ruin your family but also pose a threat to your life. If you can survive until the age of 31, you will have 50 years of glory and wealth later. I'm afraid you won't be able to jump over a water gap that is 1 zhang wide." Huang Sheng immediately cursed, "Nonsense! How can there be such a thing?" Goose Yang stretched out his fist and said, "Beat this guy and smash his iron mouth." Ma Deshan stopped them with both hands and said, "The principle of fate is subtle. Just say that his calculation is inaccurate and that's it. Why argue about it?" Huang Sheng and Goose Yang still kept swearing, but Ma Deshan managed to persuade them back with all his might. The fortune teller just wanted to avoid trouble and didn't even think about the fortune-telling fee. Truly, flattery is liked by everyone, but straightforward words are disliked by all. At that time, even Ma Deshan thought that he could easily obtain fame and fortune. Although he didn't blame the fortune teller too much, he didn't believe him either. Who would have known that although he performed well in the 3 exams, his name was not on the list? Since he first entered the examination hall at the age of 15, and now he was 21 years old, he had failed in 3 provincial examinations. Although he was not too old in terms of age, because he had taken the exam several times, it seemed rather unfavorable. Another year passed, and he had just turned 22 years old. One of Censor Ma's students impeached Wang Zhen again. Wang Zhen suspected that it was instigated by his mentor, so he revived the old feud. He secretly instigated his confidants in the court to find the faults of Ma Wankan when he was an official in the past. They framed him for embezzling 10,000 taels of silver and ordered the local governor and censor to pursue and recover the money. Ma Wankan was originally an honest official. When he heard this news, he was so angry that he fell ill and died within a few days. Ma Deshan mourned and fulfilled all the funeral rites with great grief. However, the local officials fawned on the superior's intention and forced him to pay the 10,000 taels of silver as the embezzled money. At this time, he had no choice but to sell off his family property. As long as there were tax deeds to verify, the local officials directly appraised and sold them on behalf of the government. There was only a small farmstead that he had newly purchased, which had not been taxed yet, so the government didn't know about it. Relying on his long-standing close friendship with Goose Yang, Ma Deshan said that it was Goose family property and asked him to temporarily admit it. He also sent several hundred taels worth of antiques, books, and other items to Huang Sheng's house for safekeeping. It is said that the local officials sold off all the real estate and farmland of Censor Ma's family, but it was still not enough to make up the amount. They still kept nitpicking. Ma Deshan temporarily placed his father's coffin in the morning hall. One day, Goose Yang sent someone to say that the remaining farmstead of his mansion had been known by the government and could no longer be hidden. Ma Deshan had no choice but to let it be taken over by the government. Later, he heard that it was actually Goose Yang who reported it. Firstly, he was afraid of being implicated later, and secondly, he wanted to please the local officials. Ma Deshan knew how treacherous and mean people could be and just smiled it off. After more than a year, Ma Deshan went to Huang Sheng's house to ask for the items he had entrusted for safekeeping. He went several times, but Huang Sheng refused to meet him. Finally, Huang Sheng sent someone to deliver a letter. Ma Deshan opened it and saw that there was no letter inside, only a piece of paper with accounts on it. It listed how much silver was used on a certain day of a certain month for a certain matter, which part he should share, and which part he should bear alone. This happened not just once. Then, Huang Sheng deducted the value of the antiques, books, and other items according to the estimation and didn't return a single thing. Ma Deshan was furious. In front of the messenger, he tore up the accounts and cursed loudly, "Such scoundrels! I will never see you again." Since then, the matter of the marriage was never mentioned again. Huang Sheng couldn't wait to cut off all relations with the Ma family, which was exactly what he wanted. This was just in line with the 4 lines by Feng Gong in the Western Han Dynasty, which said, "When one is noble and the other is humble, true friendship is revealed. When one is alive and the other is dead, true friendship is shown." Ma Deshan observed mourning in the mourning house beside the grave, and his clothes became tattered and he often didn't have enough to eat. "When my father was alive, he used to help others. But now that I'm in trouble, who will help me?" Old Wang, the man guarding the grave, urged him to resell the trees on the grave to others, but Ma Deshan refused. Old Wang pointed to several big cypress trees on the road and said, "These trees are not beside the tomb, so it's okay to sell them." Ma Deshan agreed. After negotiating the price, they felled one tree first. The center of the tree was all eaten away by worms and was worthless. When they felled another tree, it was the same. Ma Deshan sighed and said, "This is fate." Then he told them to stop. Those 2 trees were only good for firewood and didn't sell for much money. It was used up in less than 2 days. He only had a 12-year-old family-born servant boy left by his side. He asked Old Wang to act as a middleman and sold the boy to someone else for 5 taels of silver. After the servant boy went to the new master's house, he wet the bed every night. The master didn't want him anymore and returned him to Old Wang and demanded the original price back. Ma Deshan had no choice but to be willing to reduce the price by 2 taels and sell him again. It was so strange. The second time the boy went to the new master's house, he didn't wet the bed anymore. These few nights of bedwetting clearly cost Ma Deshan those 2 taels of silver. Let's leave this aside. Time passed quickly, and soon the mourning period was over. Ma Deshan was extremely poor and had nowhere to turn for help. He remembered that he had an uncle who served as the 2nd magistrate in Hangzhou Prefecture, Zhejiang Province, and the magistrate of Diking County in Huz who was also a student of his father. He thought it would be better to go and seek refuge with them. Maybe he could have some luck with one of them. At that time, he entrusted Old Wang to sell some of his household items to cover the travel expenses. He washed and starched his old clothes, packed them into a bundle, and took a boat on the road. When he arrived in Hangzhou and asked about his uncle, he learned that his uncle had just passed away 10 days before. Then he went to Diking County to seek refuge with the magistrate. It happened that these days, the magistrate was arguing with his superior about financial matters and was in a fit of pique and wanted to resign. He had closed the office on the pretext of being ill, and there was no way to get a message through. Truly, when luck is with you, the wind sends you to the pavilion of Prince Teng. When luck is against you, the thunder strikes the steel of good fortune. Ma Deshan failed to seek refuge with both of them. He thought that there were many former classmates who were officials in the Nanjing government offices. So he took a boat to Jingkou and wanted to cross the Yangtze River. However, there had been strong westerly winds for several days, and the upstream boats could hardly move an inch. He had to walk all the way to Jurong and head towards the old capital, Nanjing. Let's count the several city gates of Nanjing: Shens Gate, Jinchuan Gate, Yifeng Gate, Huaiyuan Gate, Qingliang Gate, Xishan Gate, Sanshan Gate, Jubao Gate, Tongji Gate, Hongguo Gate, Chaoyang Gate, and Dingtaping Gate. Ma Deshan entered the city through Tongji Gate and stayed in an inn for the night. The next morning, he went to inquire at various government departments. Many of the former classmates who had been officials in previous years had either been promoted, transferred, died, or been dismissed. He didn't find anyone who could help him. He had come with high hopes, but it was difficult to return with his hopes fulfilled. Lingering in this situation, before he knew it, more than half a year had passed and all his travel expenses had been used up. Although he didn't beg for food like Wu Zigzu in the city of Suzhou, he couldn't avoid seeking food at the Buddhist temple like LV Mengzheng. One day, Ma Deshan went to the Dabaoan temple to seek food and met an acquaintance from his hometown. When he asked about matters in his hometown, he learned that the provincial supervisor was conducting the annual examination. When Ma Deshan had just completed his mourning period earlier, because he didn't have any gifts to give to the teachers in the school, he didn't initiate the documents for resuming his studies and the application for studying away from home. He also didn't expect to be away from home for so long. Now that there was no way to communicate, the instructor directly reported him as avoiding the examination and had him dismissed. With a distance of thousands of li, there was no way to defend himself. Truly, when the roof leaks, it rains all night; when the boat is late, it meets the headwind. Upon hearing this news, Ma Deshan let out several long sighs. He felt too ashamed to return to his hometown. He intended to find a place to teach to make a living for the time being and then figure out what to do next. Who knew that people were short-sighted and couldn't tell the good from the bad? When they heard about the foreign young master in such a state, they thought he must be a dissolute person. Even if he had great literary talent, who would believe him and who would hire him? After a while, the monks all complained that he was a nuisance. The unkind words they said were too many to mention. Fortunately, there is always a way out. There was a Commander Zhao in charge of transporting grain who wanted to hire a private tutor to go to Beijing with him. One reason was to have someone to talk to, and the other was to have someone to write on his behalf. By chance, he discussed this with the abbot of Qinzhen Temple. When Ma Deshan heard about it, he thought, taking this opportunity to go to Beijing would be convenient in two ways. So he asked the monk to recommend him. The secular monk also couldn't wait to get rid of the poor wretch, so he praised Ma Deshan's advantages in front of Commander Zhao and said that the tuition fee was very low. Commander Zhao was a military officer. Without thinking too much, as long as it was economical, he invited Ma Deshan to the temple. They exchanged visiting cards and met, and then set a date to invite him to board the boat and travel together. Ma Deshan was very eloquent, and the host and guest got along quite well. Not long after, when they arrived at the mouth of the Yellow River, Ma Deshan accidentally went ashore to relieve himself. Suddenly, there was a loud noise, like the sound of the sky collapsing and the earth cracking. He hurriedly got up and looked, and was shocked to find that the river mouth had burst. The grain boats under Commander Zhao's command scattered in all directions and their whereabouts were unknown. All he could see was the surging water, stretching as far as the eye could see. Ma Deshan looked around with no one to rely on and cried out to the sky, sighing, "This is heaven's way of cutting off my life. It's better for me to die." Just as he was about to throw himself into the river, an old man saved him. When the old man asked about his background and Ma Deshan told his story, the old man felt compassion and said, "Looking at your youthful and handsome appearance, there will surely be a time for you to rise to prominence in the future. It doesn't cost much to travel to Beijing by the short route. I have 3 taels of silver with me, which I can give you as a token of respect for your journey." After saying this, he reached into his sleeve but found it empty. He exclaimed repeatedly, "Strange." When he looked carefully, there was a small hole at the bottom of his sleeve. The old man had gone out early and didn't know where he had been pickpocketed. The old man sighed and said, "As the ancients said, when our hearts are willing, it's the time when your luck turns. Today, it seems that even if my heart is willing, there is also fate involved. It's not that I'm stingy, but it's because your fate is not good. I want to invite you to my home, but I'm afraid it's too far and inconvenient." So he invited Ma Deshan to the downtown area and borrowed 5 chien of silver from a familiar host family to give to him. Ma Deshan was deeply touched by his kindness and had no choice but to accept it. He thanked the old man repeatedly and then parted ways. Ma Deshan thought, "How can I use these 5 chien of silver to cover such a long journey?" He thought of a plan and bought paper and brushes and sold his calligraphy along the way. Ma Deshan was good at both writing and calligraphy, but unfortunately, his luck was not good at that time and he couldn't get the appreciation of literati and scholars. Only some village shops and inns randomly bought a few pieces to paste on the walls. These people didn't know the value of his works and were reluctant to pay. Ma Deshan had irregular meals, sometimes hungry and sometimes half full. He managed to endure until he reached Beijing and stayed in an inn. He borrowed a list of officials from the innkeeper to check and found that there were 2 close senior uncles. One was Vice Minister Yu of the Ministry of War and the other was Cao Guanglu, a senior official in the left department. He immediately wrote his visiting card and first went to visit Lord Cao. When Lord Cao saw that he was dressed in disarray, he was displeased. Also, knowing that Ma Deshan was an enemy of Wang Zhen, he didn't dare to offer much help. He gave a small amount of travel money and then took his leave. Then Ma Deshan went to visit Vice Minister Yu. Vice Minister Yu was also not very helpful. He didn't give anything himself but wrote a letter of recommendation to General Liu, the military commander on the border. The innkeeper saw this letter and expected that Ma Deshan would have an opportunity, so he lent him 5 taels of silver as travel expenses. Who knew that at that time, the northern invaders led by Ye Xian were causing trouble and plundering a large number of people and livestock. General Lu lost the battle and was arrested and brought to Beijing to be held accountable. Even Vice Minister Yu was dismissed from office. Ma Deshan stayed in the border area for 3 or 4 months but still didn't find any opportunities. He had to return to the inn in Beijing as before. The innkeeper lost the 5 taels of silver he had lent and had nowhere to get it back. Ma Deshan also owed some money for accommodation and meals. The innkeeper, not wanting to push him out directly, came up with an idea. There was 1,000 householder Lu in the front alley. His son, who was 8 years old, needed to find a teacher. So the innkeeper recommended Ma Deshan. 1,000 householder Lu was very happy. They agreed on a tuition fee of 20 taels of silver. The innkeeper first received 1 season's tuition fee for himself, which was used to offset the money he had lent. 1,000 householder Lu was quite hospitable. He gave a new set of clothes and welcomed Ma Deshan to his residence. From then on, Ma Deshan had enough to eat. During his spare time from teaching and reciting, he reviewed the classics and history books and revised his articles. Just after 3 months, the student came down with smallpox. The imperial doctor's medicine didn't work, and the child died after 12 days. 1,000 householder Lu only had this one son. While he was mourning, some mean people said to him, Ma Deshan is like a Tai Sui that brings misfortune and a crane god that consumes energy. Wherever he goes, there will be disasters. When Commander Zhao hired him, the grain boats were damaged. When Vice Minister Yu recommended him, he lost his official position. He is an unlucky scholar and you shouldn't get close to him. 1,000 householder Lu didn't consider that his son's life and death were determined by fate but instead blamed the teacher for bringing bad luck. Word spread everywhere, and in Beijing, he got a strange nickname, the Dull Scholar. Whenever the Dull Scholar walked down the street, every household would close their doors. If people met the Dull Scholar in the morning, they would have bad luck that day. Those doing business would lose money, those looking for someone wouldn't find them, those suing in court would lose the case, and those collecting debts would either fight or curse. Even primary school students going to school would be slapped on the palm by the teacher. Because of these things, people regarded him as a monster. If they met him on a narrow path, they would all spit and say good luck before leaving. Poor Ma Deshan, a descendant of an official family and a learned scholar, was having bad luck these days. He didn't have enough to eat during the day and couldn't sleep peacefully at night. At the same time, there was a student from Zhejiang named Wu, who was very straightforward. When he heard about the Dull Scholar, he didn't believe these things and specially sought him out to meet. He invited Ma Deshan to his residence and inquired about his knowledge. He had the intention of treating him well. Before they had sat for long, suddenly Wu received a letter from home saying that his father had passed away. He left in a hurry and then recommended Ma Deshan to his fellow townsman, Lu Honglu. Mr. Lu invited Ma Deshan to his residence and treated him to a sumptuous meal. Just as they were about to start eating, suddenly there was a fire in the kitchen. The whole family panicked and fled. Ma Deshan walked slowly because he was hungry. The local people took him as the arsonist and took him to court. Without listening to his explanation, they put him in prison. Fortunately, Lu Honglu was a reasonable person. He spent money on Ma Deshan's behalf and managed to get him exempted from the king punishment. From then on, the name of the Dull Scholar became even more well known. No one was willing to take him in, and he still made a living by selling his calligraphy. He was used to mounting family letters and longevity scrolls, and he liked to write spring festival couplets during the new year. At night, he often stayed in the ancestral Master Temple, the Temple of Lord Guan, and the Temple of the Five Manifestations. Sometimes he wrote memorials for Taoists to earn a few coins to make a living. Now, let's turn to another story. Since Ma Deshan left, Huang Sheng, nicknamed Sick Ghost Huang at first, was still afraid that he would return to his hometown. But when the provincial supervisor dismissed Ma Deshan and he didn't come back home, and then someone spread the news that Ma Deshan had gone to Beijing on Commander Zhao's grain boat and had been submerged when the Yellow River burst its banks, Huang Sheng felt relieved. He pressured his sister Lu Ying day and night to remarry. Lu Ying swore with her life that she would never marry another man. During the provincial examination in the late Tian Shun reign, Huang Sheng bribed his way to pass the autumn examination. Flatterers in the village crowded around his house. When they heard that Liu Ying was still unmarried at an older age, suitors came to his door every day. Liu Ying firmly refused, and Huang Sheng had no choice. At the end of winter, he packed his bags and went to Beijing for the metropolitan examination. When Ma Deshan saw the list of those who passed the provincial examination, he knew that Huang Sheng was successful and would surely come to Beijing. Remembering the old grudge, he was ashamed to meet him and left Beijing in advance to avoid him. Who knew that Huang Sheng couldn't endure the responsibilities that came with his official position? If he had earned his future through his own learning, it would have been reasonable and he wouldn't have taken it to heart. But he had bought his position as a provincial graduate. A villain occupying a gentleman's position, he couldn't help but dance with joy. He also spent 50 taels of silver to buy an official document and rushed to Beijing by post. He found a large place to stay. Instead of reviewing the classics and history books, he spent all day wandering in the red light district, having fun in brothels. As the saying goes, extreme joy begets sorrow. He contracted syphilis from visiting prostitutes. As the examination approached, he gave 100 taels of silver to the imperial doctor, hoping to be cured quickly. The imperial doctor used mercury-containing medicine. Within a few days, he looked healthy and finished the examination in a hurry and returned home. In less than half a year, the poison of the sores flared up again. Unable to be cured, he died. He had neither brothers nor sons. His relatives all came to fight over his property. His wife, Mrs. Wang, had no idea what to do. It was all up to Liu Ying. She handled the funeral arrangements internally and dealt with the relatives externally. According to the family genealogy, she established an heir, and everyone was satisfied and had nothing to say. Liu Ying herself also received a share of the property, which was worth several thousand taels of silver. Remembering the news of her husband's boat capsizing, she didn't know if it was true or false. She spent a lot of money sending people everywhere to inquire about his whereabouts. Someone who came from Beijing said that Ma Deshan was not dead and was living in poverty in Beijing. People in Beijing all called him the dull scholar. Liu Ying was a woman of great courage. She packed up the money and valuables, took her maids and servants, hired a boat, and went straight to Beijing to look for her husband. She found out that Ma Deshan was copying the Lotus Sutra in the Dabi Pavilion of Longxing Temple in Zhengding Prefecture. So she gave 100 taels of silver, several sets of new clothes, and wrote a letter with her own hand. She sealed them up properly and sent the old servant Wang An to welcome her husband back. She instructed, "I will now help Mr. Ma apply to enter the Imperial College according to the regulations. Please ask Mr. Ma to come here to study and take the Imperial examination without delay." When Wang An arrived at Longxing Temple, he met the abbot and asked, "Where is Mr. Ma from Fujian?" The abbot said, "Here we only have the dull scholar, and there is no Mr. Ma you mentioned." Wang An said, "That's him. Please kindly introduce me to him." The monk led him to the Dabi Pavilion and pointed, "Isn't the person writing the scriptures at the table beside there the dull scholar?" Wang An had met Ma Deshan several times when he was at home. Although Ma Deshan was in rags now, how could he not recognize him? As soon as he saw Ma Deshan, he knelt down and kowtowed. Ma Deshan, who was in poverty and hardship, didn't expect this. He couldn't remember for a moment and hurriedly helped him up, asking, "Who are you, sir?" Wang An said, "I'm from the Huang family in Jiangil County. I'm here to welcome you, sir, on the orders of the young lady. The young lady has a letter here." Ma Deshan then asked, "Which family has the young lady married into?" Wang An said, "The young lady has remained true to her will until now and has sworn not to remarry. Because the master of the family has recently passed away, the young lady has come to Beijing in person to look for you, sir. She wants to help you enter the Imperial College by contributing grain, and she asks you to arrange your departure date as soon as possible." Ma Deshan then opened the letter and saw that it was a poem, which read, "Why does my dear one love to wander far away? He should know he hasn't won the official hat yet. There will surely be favorable winds for soaring southward. And he should ready the pair of flutes to gather in the Phoenix Tower." After reading the poem, Ma Deshan smiled slightly. Wang An presented the clothes and silver and asked about the departure date. Ma Deshan said, how can I not know the young lady's deep affection? But I had made a promise before, only when I have my name on the imperial examination list can I have the wedding night. Due to poverty in the past, I have neglected my studies for a long time. Now, fortunately, I have enough money to cover the expenses for my studies. I will wait until I achieve success in the autumn examination next year before I dare to meet the young lady. Wang An didn't dare to force him and asked for a reply letter. Ma Deshan took a piece of silk left from writing the scriptures and replied with a poem of 4 lines, I'm tired of wandering in the hustle and bustle of the world. I'm glad to hear the good news from the messenger. I have a long-standing agreement with the goddess of the moon to pick the flowers. Don't let the sound of the flute come out of the phoenix tower. Ma Deshan sealed the poem and gave it to Wang An. Wang An rushed back to Beijing overnight and reported back to Miss Lu Ying. After she opened the poem and read it, she sighed with regret. In that year, during the Tianshun reign, the emperor encountered the Tumu crisis. The Empress Dowager temporarily asked the Prince of Yu to act as the regent and changed the reign title to Jingtai. The entire family of the treacherous eunuch Wang Zhen was confiscated of their property, and those who had impeached Wang Zhen and suffered losses were promoted and given hereditary privileges. Miss Huang, who was staying in the residence, got this news and sent Wang An to Longxing Temple again to inform Ma Deshan. At this time, although Ma Deshan was staying in the monks' quarters, there were books all over the table, and he had fine clothes and delicious food, which was no longer like before. The monks knew that he was young Master Ma and Mr. Ma, and they all respected him. That year, he was exactly 32 years old and his good luck came, which was exactly in line with what Mr. Zhang Taikao had predicted. It can be seen that everything is determined by fate, and there is nothing that can be changed by man. Ma Deshan was reviewing his old studies in the temple. After getting the news from Wang An, he packed his bags, bid farewell to the abbot, and went to Beijing. He found another residence to stay in. Miss Huang assigned 2 servants to serve him, and all kinds of daily supplies were continuously sent to him. Ma Deshan drafted a memorial, recounting the reason why his late father, Ma Wangkan, had suffered misfortune for speaking the truth. One was to beg for grace and exoneration for his father, and the other was to restore his own future. The imperial decree was issued, approving the restoration of Ma Wangkan's original position and adding 3 more ranks. Ma Ren was allowed to resume his studies and receive the stipend. The confiscated land and property were to be recovered and returned by the local officials. Ma Deshan sent a servant to inform Miss Huang of this. Miss Huang sent Wang An to send silver to Ma Deshan's residence and told him to apply for entering the Imperial College by contributing grain according to the regulations. In the next spring, he became the top scorer in the Imperial College examination, and in the autumn, he became the top scorer in the provincial examination. He prepared a wedding feast in his residence and married Miss Huang. In the following spring, he ranked 10th in the metropolitan examination, and in the palace examination, he was ranked in the 2nd class and was selected as a probationary grand secretary. He submitted a memorial asking for leave to return to his hometown to offer sacrifices at his ancestors' graves, and the imperial decree approved it. The couple returned to their hometown in glory, and the officials of the prefecture and county came out of the city to welcome them. The land and houses that had been confiscated in previous years were all redeemed at the official price, and they were registered and handed over, not missing a single bit. Those friends who had neglected him in the past flocked to his door like a busy market. Only Goose Yang felt ashamed and moved to another prefecture. At that time, Mr. Zhang Taikao was still alive. When he heard that young Master Ma had passed the examination and returned in glory, he specially came to offer his congratulations. Ma Deshan gave him a generous gift and saw him off. Later, Ma Ren was promoted all the way to be the Minister of Rights, Minister of War, and Minister of Punishment. Miss Lu Ying was conferred the title of a first-rank lady. The 2 sons she gave birth to both passed the imperial examinations and the family's glory continued. Even now, in Yanping Prefecture, when people talk about scholars who haven't passed the imperial examinations, they compare them to the dull scholar. Later generations have a poem saying, "For 10 years, in despair, he had few friends. One day, with good fortune, his wishes came true. Chrysanthemums in autumn and peaches in spring each have their own time. Why search for a needle in the depths of the sea?"